The US says it will continue parachuting aid into Gaza, despite a plea by Hamas to stop the practice. The militant group says people have died while trying to collect food packages. Parts of Gaza are facing famine. Nearly 6 months into Israel's military campaign, they are triggered by the October 7th Hamas terror attacks.
Scenes like this are quickly becoming another grim feature of the war in Gaza. Humanitarian aid dropped from an aircraft over the territory. This time it falls in the Mediterranean, well offshore, making the civilians on the ground even more desperate.
We were waiting for the aid when we were surprised to see the plane coming and dropping it into the sea. People were swimming to retrieve the aid, but didn't survive.
Hamas-appointed health officials say at least 12 people drowned this week trying to reach airdropped packages. Another 6 people were killed in stampedes. The group is urging that airdrops be stopped, a plea supported by many Gazans.
In terms of the aid, one of the biggest mistakes is that it's dropped in dangerous places like the sea. Some of the people trying to get the aid have drowned. The problem is simple. They need to bring it through the crossings so it can reach these poor people.
Pressure has been growing on Israel to help speed up aid deliveries through the border crossings into Gaza, with the UN warning the territory is on the verge of a man-made famine.
You cannot claim to adhere to these international provisions of law when you block UNRWA food convoys, when you just last week denied 5 missions to the north, when we have now reports of Israeli attacks on warehouses and the police that are supposed to help secure this aid inside Gaza.
The UN also criticized claims by some Israeli officials refuting reports of an imminent famine.
I said, and I will say it again, as much as I know, there is no starvation in Gaza.
As aid groups are desperate to bring more food into Gaza, the US says it will keep parachuting aid into the territory. Washington insists the airdrops are just one of the channels for aid deliveries, and that they should continue.
I'm now joined by Christian Lindmeier. He's a spokesperson for the World Health Organization and joins me from Geneva. Christian, we heard people absolutely desperate for food. Paint us a picture of what's happening right now there in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gad. Well, this is unfortunately exactly the scenario that everywhere in the middle, in the north, in the south, people are desperate. The food is lacking, the fresh water is lacking. I think yesterday OCHA said again that right now the available maximum for per person is 2 to 3, less than 3 liters of fresh water per day. And that's not pure drinking water. That's just water for everything, including cooking. And you know the rule by thumb is you need about 3 liters of drinking water per day, only drinking water. So that's that. And medical aid is missing. Evacuation missions to the north have often been denied. Literally half an hour ago, I got the message that another convoy, which we had planned for evacuating critically injured people from the patients from the Shifa hospital, was denied again. So there's desperation everywhere, from the food, from the medical supplies, from the sheltering, from the lack of space to go. If you look at Rafah, a place of more than 1 million people now squeezed together in the tightest, always waiting for the offensive that has been announced for so long, and with no place to go.
Now, Hamas has asked the US and others to stop the airdrops, but wouldn't that make the humanitarian situation worse?
Let's look at 2 parts here. Every single piece of bread, every single piece of medical equipment, every wound dressing, every liter of water is urgently needed. So in that sense, of course, an airdrop is a little aid to what's going on. But the amount of aid that can be dropped in by air or by the famous boat delivery, I think the boat delivery was about 200 tons of food. Put that into comparison of a truck, a single truck can carry about 20 tons of food. So with only 10 trucks, you have that big announced delivery of a ship transport, for example, solved. The airdrops are extremely critical. One, as you see in your commentary here in the pictures, they drop somewhere either on land or on sea. People rush, people drown, and on top of it, it's a rush of the healthy ones. Let's not forget that. So those who get these aid packages are those who are the most fit and the most, well, in healthy conditions, stable ones. The ones sitting in or lying in hospitals, in shelters, the elderly, the weak, they will never get to these deliveries, and they are the ones who need it the most. So it's a survival of the fittest in the most cynical way. Again, an airdrop can be a little point of relief in a very specified situation, can be useful, but what we need here is steady access, safe, sustainable access with convoys from the north, from the south, from the middle, constantly, and that will relieve a little bit what's going on there.
You touched upon this a bit earlier, but let's talk about the health infrastructure briefly. How is the situation now, and how are people getting any basic health care?
Yeah, it's a desperate situation, and then the word desperate is so overstretched already, because we have, since months, we're describing the health situation as desperate, and it's getting worse by the day, if not by the hour. So we have very few hospitals working anymore in terms of partially working and delivering some aid. We have a few hospitals in the north. We have a few health centers and hospitals in the south, but also with very limited capacity. The big centers for health used to be the ones in the north, the big with many operating theaters, with specialties for injuries or diseases, and most of this is out of function. The laboratories are out of function. So people get help, well, if they reach a healthcare center, they can get some basic help, very often being treated on the floors next to people who are sheltering in the hospitals under totally unhygienic conditions, very often with the lack of the basic medical equipment or the basic medical supplies, operations and even amputations having to be taken without any anesthetic material. So really, really desperate. And again, those who make it to the hospitals or to the health centers are even the lucky ones, because they made it there. Ambulances very often can't get out anymore to the people to help them. Those injured or sick or anything cannot even reach the shelters or the hospitals. So again, the ones who make it to the hospitals are actually the lucky ones, and that's again a very cynical comment.
Christian Lindmeier, there of the World Health Organization, joining us from Geneva. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's bring in Hiba Tibi, who is the West Bank and Gaza country director for the aid agency CARE International, based in Ramallah. Hiba, the US says it will continue parachuting aid into Gaza. Hamas wants the practice to stop. Where do you stand, and is there an alternative to airdrops?
Thank you so much for the question. Unfortunately, as we have seen over the last days, over the last weeks, the report that was announced indicating that almost half of Gaza is under catastrophic situation, and a lot are already identified under the famine category number 5. The problem with what we have seen in this report is the scale and the speed of deterioration in the situation. And we have seen that the numbers doubled in the last 4 weeks because of the lack of access of food into Gaza. Is airdropping is the best way? It's not. It is saving lives. If any food that is entering Gaza is saving lives, but it is not the best way to facilitate aid into Gaza. As we have seen now in your report, it's not safe to get it. It is not equally accessed. It is not guaranteed where it will be dropped. And unfortunately, it is connected. Over the last weeks, we have seen for different reasons, it is connected with dangerous life life issues, so people are losing their life to access it. The alternative is to open the border with consistent amount of aid that is entering all of Gaza, enabling environment to facilitate the distribution, to reach to those who are in most need and most vulnerable ones, including elderly, people with disabilities, and women in the north and in the south.
Now, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has made some very specific accusations against Israel, alleging it is blocking food convoys, and has also said that there are reports that Israel is attacking warehouses where aid may be stored. Does your organization have any information about that?
Unfortunately, our mandate does not fall into the information seeking or confirming this piece of information. But what I can share with you is that, for instance, what we are having in CARE is that we have delays in the process, the lengthy process that is taking time in terms of checking the convoys that we are sending. We don't have access to the north, so most of our work is done in the south, and even to less extent in the central area. The unsafe environment makes it very difficult for us to distribute it in a more relaxed way, if I can say, more quality-related way. Also, the third point that I can share and confirm with you, that the break of law and order, and for different reasons, makes it very difficult for the organizations to receive the aid convoys and store it. So we try to distribute it as quick as possible, so that we make sure that our convoys content is distributed rather than being lost in the storage.
Hiba Tibi there, CARE International's Country Director for the West Bank and Gaza. Thank you very much.
Thank you.